Tom Cruise at 50 years old. Me. You go, Tom. The fuse is lit once again with the return of Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the 5th in the Mission Impossible franchise. And this is a franchise that has actually quite literally gained a spark when it comes to inspiration, when it comes to momentum, and just playing fun after what a lot of people perceive to be in the 3rd installment when J.J. Abrams came in to direct, and a lot of people love that movie. I personally have not seen it. I remember parts of 1, parts of 2. I did not see 3, and I did manage to catch Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol back in 2011, which kind of blew me away that I looked that up and it said 2011. I could have sworn that movie came out a little later, but it's actually been quite a while since the last Mission Impossible movie, so we were kind of sort of overdue. So now we got Rogue Nation, and this time it's not directed by Brad Bird, it's directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who has worked with Tom Cruise before on Jack Reacher, which is a movie that a lot of people have liked as well, and I still have yet to watch. However, I'm hoping to fix that very soon, considering that Fandango, which is the website I bought my ticket for this movie through, went ahead and gave me a code to download one of the previous Mission Impossible movies, so hopefully I'll be using it on 3 and check out what people were raving about, because a lot of people like that movie and believe that that's where the franchise kind of went back uphill after the disaster that was Mission Impossible 2, because I saw most of that movie. There were a couple of bits that I missed here and there, but I remember catching like a good 2/3 of that movie on TV once, and I saw enough that made me go, oh, okay. So in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, this organization called the Syndicate, which Benji, Simon Pegg's character, describes as an anti-IMF, is going around performing these terrorist attacks, and of course Tom Cruise, being that he's Tom Cruise and he's crazy, he's got to do ridiculous stuff like this to bring down this syndicate, which is this rogue nation that's targeting certain areas of the world in hopes of bringing down the IMF. So coming off of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, I can understand why people loved that movie, myself included. It was one of the highlights of the year because it was this really awesome action movie filled with plenty of great action sequences, but at the same time it had this team, it had this sense of camaraderie amongst the team, that it wasn't just Tom Cruise, because for a while, ever since that first movie, and especially the second movie, I can't speak for the third movie because I haven't seen it, but from what I can recall from those movies, there were mainly Tom Cruise vehicles, because at the time Tom Cruise was the hottest movie star on the planet, and so whenever he was putting out a movie, especially a Mission Impossible movie, it was the hot ticket of the year. And obviously filmmakers, or at least movie studios, knew that, and therefore they made Tom Cruise the centerpiece. So he didn't really need a team, he didn't really need backup, but because his stardom kind of waned, because we've had different things, people like different kind of movies, and of course there was his deals about his private life that we already know about because they were very much public. I felt like the studios behind these movies sensed that as well, and they're like, okay, we gotta bring something to the Mission Impossible franchise to make it stand on its own legs, and at the same time still keep that fun, still keep those thrills going. And the angle that they took with Ghost Protocol, that they may have taken in 3, but like I said, I don't know because I haven't seen the movie, and I really need to fix that. That I'm happy to say they kind of keep going here in Rogue Nation, is that feeling of this team gathering together to perform this mission, that they all are friends with one another, but most importantly they help each other out, they're loyal to one another, and they're loyal to Ethan Hunt. And what I'm happy to say about this movie is that Christopher McQuarrie is able to take that tone that Brad Bird stated in Ghost Protocol and carry it on over to here, where you have a good balance of humor, of friendship amongst the agents, and great action set pieces. Just not as tight as I was hoping it for it to be. I mean, it's still a very well-made movie. It just didn't have this certain je ne sais quoi, if you will, about Brad Bird's direction in the previous movie. And being that we're in the 5th movie, there is a challenge. How do we keep things moving along with a good pace and at the same time making things feel fresh and getting people to go see your movie, especially when you're dealing with Tom Cruise, who is getting kind of old. He's already in his 50s. Well, I think he's pushing 50. Either he late 40s or about 50, 51, around there. And sure, I still have to commend the guy for doing all his own stunts. You see that shot in the trailer as in the poster where he's hanging off the side of the building, and that was actually him up there at what, tens of thousands of feet up in the air, dangling from the side of this plane. You gotta give the guy props. But at the same time, what I was hoping for them to somewhat change with certain details here and there, but not fully make it, make him the centerpiece of the movie like in the previous Mission Impossible movies, is to find a reason for the rest of the team to be so loyal to Ethan Hunt, because throughout the movie you get characters saying, he's my friend, I'm willing to go with him on this mission, that kind of thing. But what is it about him that makes these characters want to go on this mission and accept those risks for him? Because Ethan Hunt is a cool character, but by this time I'm hoping for there to be an angle to him, and that's something that I was hoping that Rogue Nation would touch upon, but unfortunately they didn't. And it's a slight nitpick of mine, but I was hoping for them to find something within Ethan Hunt that makes me go, oh wow, this guy's kind of relatable, because he's teetering on Bruce Willis status, where the dude is indestructible, but at the same time, it's Tom Cruise. He's able to sell it. I just wish that they would layer the character a bit more. But this does call for a bit of a trade that I rather have them do, which is that even though Ethan Hunt is not as layered as I was hoping for him to be, I rather take the side characters to be enjoyable characters to watch rather than have it be the Tom Cruise show. Say for example, Simon Pegg comes back as Benji Dunn, who I really liked in Ghost Protocol, and I believe again, I'm not going to comment on 3, but he was definitely in Ghost Protocol, and I really did like him in this movie. He actually plays a larger role than he did in that last movie, because he really does get out there on the field. Not that he wasn't in the last one, but he just becomes way more involved with the main story than he was in the previous movie, and it's Simon Pegg. He's able to bring the right amount of humor, the right amount of charisma, and at the same time, his character, because you like him so much, you're able to understand why the stakes are so high. Ving Rhames, who is a Mission Impossible regular, as well as Jeremy Renner, whose character was introduced in the last movie, which a lot of people were spreading these rumors that he was probably going to be the main character from now on, like with Bourne Identity, but we know how that turned out. Anyways, I was glad to see them come back in this movie, and I was kind of scared that they were going to sideline them for a little while, especially Jeremy Renner, who in the first, 30 minutes or so of the movie, he's mainly stuck at Washington, D.C., speaking to monitors and that kind of thing. But I was happy that eventually the story for the movie manages to find a way to work them into the actual plot and have them be out in the field along with Tom. And there's this really good scene of having all of those characters, Ving Rhames, Jeremy Renner, Tom Cruise, and Simon Pegg, literally just sit down on a table and just look at each other like, hey, gang's back together. And with a new Mission Impossible movie comes a new femme fatale, and this time it is with the actress named Rebecca Ferguson, who plays Isla, I believe was her name, and she was badass. Now, granted, her character is somewhat conventional, which is something I'm about to talk about in a brief second, but despite that, I thought she brought a sense of badassery to her character. But watching her the entire time doing all these cool espionage things made me think one thing. She's got the physique, she's got the blue eyes, she's got the complexion, and at the end of the movie I was sold. She would have been a great Wonder Woman. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't get my mind off of seeing her in the Wonder Woman costume, and it's not because it's just some crazy fetish. It was because I legitimately saw her in the role, especially when there's a scene where she's wearing this dress, and there were a couple of shots of showing her back, and her back muscles, like these ones right here, are actually pretty big. And not just for a female, but just for anybody. And I'm like, that's Wonder Woman, right? She would have been a great Wonder Woman. And she's got a bit of a, toning going on here in her shoulder. Yes, I'm crushing on the girl. Definitely I am. But needless to say, I would have loved to have seen her in the Wonder Woman role instead of Gal Gadot. But here's to hoping that Gal Gadot is able to bring that kind of physicality to the character like I feel could have. But you know what they say, a good spy movie is only as good as its villain. which is definitely something that I shouldn't be saying around this movie, because sadly this is where I get into what is, in my opinion, the biggest flaw with the movie, and that is that it can get borderline generic at times with not only its plot but also its villain, who, I mean, the dude is as generic as they come. He even speaks the same way Eddie Redmayne did in Jupiter Ascending. It talks like this. And I'm not even kidding. Some people were laughing when he first started speaking, and I couldn't blame them. I couldn't blame them at all, because I was like, oh, we're doing this kind of villain? I mean, I was hoping for something a bit better, but man, he's as generic as they come. His motivation, all that, I'm just like, wow, okay, sure. And it's not just the villain, but occasionally the plot does delve into the general style of these spy movies, where you're dealing with hard drives and computer chips and terminals and stuff like that. Much more practical things. And on top of that, you got Alec Baldwin's character, who is that typical hot-headed administrator over at the CIA, who's like, you know, these guys, they're bad, they bring about bad stuff, and, you know, he's at odds with one of the team members, or in some cases the main head of the team, which in this case would be Tom Cruise, except he's mostly at odds with Jeremy Renner's character, because they're the two that share the most amount of screen time. But he plays that conventional character who's trying to shut down the team, even though you can kind of guess he's probably not going to shut down the team, or if he tries, he's not going to be that successful. I'm not necessarily trying to spoil the movie, I'm not going to tell you exactly what goes down, but you get an idea of what that type of character is, and that's something that this movie definitely suffers, which is certain spy action movie conventions that I feel like the screenwriter, which is in this case also the director, needed to fit in there, because, hey, if it works, it gets people in seats, but it may not please everybody, myself included. So if you're going to get a little bit generic with your plot, then you got to get a little creative and thrilling with your action sequences if you're going to be delivering an action movie. And luckily, that is where I feel Mission Impossible Rogue Nation definitely succeeds. Obviously, the director and writer Christopher McQuarrie is very familiar with action. He did Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise before, so he handles Tom Cruise's enthusiasm to want to do his own stunts and to actually get deep into these action sequences and be dedicated to that craft, which is something that should not be taken for granted. And there's plenty of great action sequences in this movie. There's this car/motorcycle chase through Morocco that was very fun. There's this one moment in that scene that just made me laugh so hard. And don't get me wrong, the entire scene is very fun to watch, but there's this quick shot that featured Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise, and it's a blink and you miss it type of cutaway that just had me laughing. All thanks to Simon Pegg. But besides that, you got great scenes throughout the movie, and they're really prolonged. What I liked the most about these action sequences is that they managed to find a way to take those scenes and fit them into the story. They never felt like they come out of nowhere, like, oh, we gotta have this action sequence, or let's just have it be put in there. They actually feel organic to the story. I know that's a very fancy term for an action movie like Mission Impossible, but it's true. They feel like they were sewed into the story and they made sense. And it's sure, you got the opening sequence that does feature the shot that everybody was talking about from the trailer and from the poster, and that is the shot of Tom Cruise dangling from the side of the building, the side of the plane, sorry. But to me, the standout action, well, not so much action sequence, but much more of a edge of your seat, exciting, thrilling moment was the one where Tom Cruise jumps into this giant water butthole that takes him down to this chamber where he has to replace these cards, all while he's running on like 3 minutes worth of oxygen within his own lungs, because he can't take any oxygen tanks with him in there, because it's not going to be allowed to do that, because we need to have excitement. But anyways, that scene. First of all, I'm very claustrophobic when it comes to not underwater scenes, but mainly when you bring up the stakes and you introduce the possibility of possibly drowning. When it comes to deaths, there's something about drowning that gets to me. And the fact that we're dealing with that claustrophobic aspect of possibly drowning while trying to gasp for your own air that you have in your lungs because you have no other kind of assistance, it kind of got to me. And the whole scene is played out without any music, and you got these panning shots of everything that's possibly going wrong down there. And it's a very, very, very thrilling scene that captivated my attention most of all. There's no denying that Mission Impossible Rogue Nation does struggle a little bit when trying to be a little bit original and fresh and new with its plot, but if you can't do that, then you gotta go with what you are ultimately supposed to be, which is an action movie. And Mission Impossible Rogue Nation definitely delivers that, while at the same time not taking itself too seriously and keeping the humor up, but most of all keeping that sense of camaraderie that Brad Bird brought in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol that I really did appreciate, and I definitely feel like the franchise needs at this point. And so for that, I give Mission Impossible Rogue Nation a good, fair 8 out of 10. It's a definitely an enjoyable movie, one of the finer action movies of the year. Not necessarily one of the big standouts to really change up the game, but definitely one to catch in the theaters, especially on a large format, because there's certain scenes that feel like deserve to be seen in the big screen, especially that car chase in Morocco, or this shot from the opening sequence of the movie. Because even though I already saw it in the trailer, I still couldn't help but smile seeing the plane take off and looking at the expression on Tom Cruise's face saying like, oh my god, what did I sign up for? Ah! So let me know what you guys thought of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation if you have watched it, but if you have not, will you be checking it out this weekend? And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.